the base of the skull. In order to do that, if you would like to have a block or something behind your head, that can help you kind of elongate some of that neck fascia so that we can feel a more neutral position. So maybe you could lift the chin and lower it. You could do this without the block too, and then just bring the chin side to side, like you're turning the nose to the right and to the left. And notice if anything's moving around tissue-wise or muscle-wise around the neck, the skull, and then feel that lengthened position where the chin is slightly toward the throat. Back of the neck is long. Let's feel the scapula, the shoulder blades on the ground, even if you need to wiggle a little bit to find them. Same thing with the sacrum. Let's just free it a little bit, rocking the pelvis side to side. So think about kind of rocking onto one hip at a time. That's rocking the pelvis side to side. Now let's tip forward and back. So we tip forward, we arch the low back, and then we tip backwards and we curl the tailbone under. So we're tipping forward and back, starting to free up some of that tissue and some of the fascia around the pelvis, around the low back. And then if you had that block or something under your head, you could move it now if that feels comfortable. Starting with the arms out, you could have arms out, palms up. You could goalpost the arms. That's a pretty big pull on the front of the chest. So if that starts to pop the ribs up, keep the ribs in and go back to this option. Feet will come just a touch wider than hips distance apart. Rock onto your right butt cheek. So we're going to rock onto that right hip, not collapsing the knees. Push the ground away with that left foot. So your left inner part of the foot is really pushing down like you're in a bridge pose almost. So engage that left glute. And then come back through center. So coming to the sacrum and then rock to the left hip. Try to keep the ribs on the ground, so really opening the chest. Push the ground away with that right foot. Push into the big toe, the inner foot, the heel. Tighten that right glute. And then come back through center. Good, so that right away is just starting to move some of that fascia and some of that nice tissue around the pelvis, around the ribs. And we'll bring the feet back to the mat, feet hips distance apart, feeling that triple S again. So lengthened in the spine, hands will come to your thighs like you're trying to push your legs away from you without that arching the low back. So get that feeling with the sacrum down of pushing the thighs away, push into your big toes, lift the hips slightly without changing the pelvis. So we're lifting up using the glutes, the pelvis stays the same, low back stays long, low in your bridge pose here. Push into your feet, so big toes, try to get all the way into the pinky toes, press into the heels, the ball of the foot. So we're really trying to maintain your full contact with the foot. And then see if you could try to press into the balls of the feet and lift and spread the toes. Now you really have to visualize this to help. Lifting the toes, spreading them might feel impossible, but we want to visualize that spread, spreading the plantar fascia underneath the feet, and then lower the toes down. We'll stay in bridge pose. Arms come up, fist of fire. So let's open and close the hands. So into fist, and then just really spreading the fingers wide. Notice right away that heat, maybe around the wrists, the forearms. And then stay up in your bridge as long as you can. If you need to lower down and then lift back up, you can. Let's bring the palms up toward the ceiling. Take your left fingers and we'll pull the right fingers back into a wrist extension stretch. Checking with your breath. Keep making full contact with your feet, especially the balls of the feet and the big toes. Good, left palm up, let's pull back. Hands are going to come to your front ribs. Take a breath in. As you exhale, hold the ribs in the same place, so don't let them pop up, but we're going to try to lower down one vertebra at a time, super slowly as you can toward the lowest part of your spine. And then feel that connection of your triple S, that elongated spine from the tailbone to the crown of the head, hands behind the head, elbows up toward the ceiling. If that feels fairly easy to do, then think of elbows in toward the forehead. So we want this wrapping in of the elbows. Take a big breath into the sides of the rib cage. As you exhale, feel your front ribs pull down toward the ground as you lift off the shoulder blades. It's a tiny lift. We're not yanking the neck, and we're not even really rounding or curling the spine. We're just lifting high enough to get off the shoulder blades. Inhale and lower down. Exhale, feel the ribs pull in toward the body. Chin is slightly towards your throat. The back of the neck is long. Inhale to lower down. Exhale, lift up. As you feel the ribs pull down, can you also feel the belly pull down? Now keep your sacrum right between the cheeks on the ground as we extend the right leg in line with the left knee. Pull the toes towards you, that's flexion of the ankle, and then point the toes, plantar flexion. Step it down, inhale and lower down. Exhale, lift up, feel the ribs pull in, feel the belly draw down. Keep your low back the same, left leg extends in line with the right knee. Pull the toes back towards you, maybe feel a stretch along the back of the leg. Point the toes, maybe a stretch at the front of the ankle or the shin even. Step it down, inhale and lower. Exhale, lift up, ribs pull in, belly draws down. We keep the sacrum right in between the cheeks the same. Right leg extends. 2 times, flex, point, stay off the shoulder blades, flex, point, step it down, inhale and lower. Exhale, lift, ribs pull in, belly draws down. Keep the low back the same, left leg extends. 2 times, flex, point, stay off the shoulder blades, flex, point, step it down, inhale and lower. And let's release the hands, pick up your right foot. Now we already got the ankle a little bit warmed up, maybe around the shin. Let's bring the hands to the front of the pelvis, hold it still. Now think about the top of your right thigh bone. So the top of your leg where it inserts into the hip. We're just doing these tiny little circles like we're stirring a straw with that thigh bone, and then reverse the direction. And can you do this, one, without losing your triple S, so the skull, shoulder blades, and sacrum, and then without wiggling the whole body? Good. Right knee over the hip. This is hip flexion. Let's bring our fingers to the hip crease, right where the thigh meets the hip. And as we externally rotate, our heel swivels to the left. Internally rotate, heel swivels a little bit to the right. So it's kind of like our shin is windshield wipering as we rotate the hip. We're also starting to get just a little fascial pull around the right hip. Let's cross it all the way over for figure 4. This is hip external rotation. You can have the right toes pointed, relaxed, flexed, whatever feels good for that right hip and knee. Feel that triple S stay on the ground. Now maybe we bring the arms out again. If that feels good to open the chest, you can also just have arms at your sides. Our first option is to push into the ball and big toe of that left foot and lift and lower the heel. So this is a nice way to keep waking up the plantar fascia at the bottom of the foot, starting to get the calf muscle involved, maybe up into the hamstring. You could try to lift the heel and then float the foot up, a lot more core engagement. So either one, and then any extra movement we do on this left side is going to start to involve more fascia on the right side. Good, release it down, and let's switch. Left foot comes up, hands to the front of the pelvis. Let's stir that left thigh bone around like a straw in a cup. Tiny circles without the low back rocking side to side. Now knee right over the hip, hip flexion. Left fingers to the hip crease as we externally and internally rotate that left hip. Now we want to feel this movement at the left hip joint without the whole trunk getting involved. So everything else stays really still. Cross it over, figure 4. Any option with this left foot. Flex, pointed, relaxed. Keep that triple S down. You can lift and lower the right heel, pushing into the toe. You can have arms out. You could add that lift off here, pulling the right thigh toward the body. So that's going deeper into hip flexion on that right side if you're pulling it in. And then that's going to get a bigger pull on the outer left hip as you do that. So find your option that feels good. And release it down. Let's hug the knees in. Take a little rock side to side, maybe up and down. And we'll come into a seated position. Finding that triple S here. So if you need to sit on the block or anything to help find that stack of the ears, over the shoulders, over the ribs, over the pelvis. Let's go over a little side bend here. So we'll reach right arm up. Now everything on this right side, like your fingers are attached to a string, lift that whole right side up. So already that's pulling at the fascia on the side of the body, especially between the ribs and the side of the pelvis. That's an area we'll try to target a little bit. So really feel that upward lift. Left hand will come to the front ribs, almost like you're pushing the ribs back without rounding the spine. And keep that feeling in the ribs as you side bend. So now we're getting more pull on that right side body, but you might also feel a little bit in the mid back as you push the ribs back so that the back ribs and that back fascia can get a little bit more pull or stretch. And then let's switch. So left arm up, like a string is on your fingers, lift, 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 lift. Take your right hand. You can push back, you can just have hand there for awareness, your choice. But keep that upward lift as you side bend. So when we keep those front ribs in, our back ribs get a chance to get more broad. So we get more space, more breath into the back ribs, more space in that back fascia. All right, let's head to quadruped, hands and knees. We'll start with some low back movement and some pelvic awareness. So again, we have a lot of tight fascia that can contribute to low back or hip discomfort, lack of mobility. So let's start with just making it a little bit more pliable, a little bit more able to pull and stretch with us. So walk those knees in right under the hands for our quadruped. And think about a marker or a crayon attached to your tailbone. Can you visualize your tailbone drawing circles? And can you start to feel that circular movement? Notice what feels maybe restricted, what feels free to move. Is it one side more than the other? And then make sure you switch directions. And now find just a neutral position for the pelvis. Let's get a little bit into the upper back. So we're kind of segmentally getting into some movement for the spine. Right arm out. Your left arm's job is to stay as still and as stable as possible. So don't let it wiggle around as you start to turn the chest. So the center of the chest, your sternum is going to turn maybe an inch or so. Don't let that left shoulder change. Notice if it dropped forward toward the chest. And take a full breath in here and just picture expansion, sideways and backwards. One more full inhale here. And this time as you exhale, thread that right arm under into a thoracic rotation, any amount that feels comfortable. Your head could rest on the ground, you could have a block under your head, you could have your head just hanging. And I want you to take a full breath here. And then come back up. Let's switch. So now our right shoulder is fixed in place. It's not going to wiggle around. Left arm out. Turn from the center of the chest without that right shoulder moving. Stay for a full inhale. Breathe into your side and back ribs. One more inhale when you're ready. As you exhale, thread it under. Pause here wherever you are. Take a full breath. Can you feel that expansion here into the ribs? Come back to your quadruped. Let's cat-cow. You could cat-cow on palms, on fists. You could turn your fingers out to the side as much as they'll go. But let's really start to feel this intentional movement of the spine in both flexion, rounding the back, and extension. And what we want to feel is this global movement. So the full spine moving, not just one area. We have areas that are more mobile. So just notice where it feels easy to get that cat-cow movement and where it feels a little bit trickier to get that cat-cow movement. We'll stay in our cat. Let's bring the fingers forward as we transition to down dog. So round the back, let the head get heavy. Push the ground away. Keep that activity through the hands, the arms, the shoulders as you tuck the toes. Hip creases lift way up, like we're hiking the pelvis up. You can walk the feet way in and start with the knees nice and bent. So by bending the knees, we can free up some fascia that connects all the way from the heels, up the back of the legs, up the back, all the way up into the shoulders. And let's add a little heel stretch here. So one side will lower, keeping length in the spine, and then the other heel lowers. Keep the ribs hugging in toward the body, so not drooping down. We're continually feeling our hip creases lift up, up, up. Active in the arms, so getting a nice stretch and pull on some muscles and fascia, stabilizing through the arms. Now, huge bend in your knees. Heels can be way lifted. As we start to walk the hands back, your heels will eventually lower down, but keep that connection of torso to the thighs. Hands can come as high as you need. Let's let the head get heavy. And shimmy whatever might feel good to move. So maybe the head, you can kind of sway the shoulders, the ribs, the hips, the pelvis, but really push your feet into the ground. Good, let's find a position where we can bend the knees, use the glutes to get back up, and we will make our way to the back of the mat. And feel that elongation in the spine. Let the knees stay soft so we can feel the pelvis is upright, the ribs are in. Hands will come front and back of the pelvis as we pick up the right foot. It can be super low. We're going to do a little hip circle. And then step it forward. Pick up that left foot. Tiny hip circle without the low back moving. Step it forward. Good. Walk your way forward like this, one foot at a time. Really staying small in that hip circle so that we don't wiggle the whole body. And when you get to the front of the mat, let's pause here, knees soft. Inhale the arms forward and up. Lift those shoulder blades way up, but keep the ribs in. Fold forward without rounding, long in the spine. We're heading back to quadruped, hands and knees. Now picture a dog, a nice tail from your tailbone, and let's start with a wag side to side. So instead of circling the pelvis or the torso, we're side bending. So this is lateral flexion. Now can we make it bigger and maybe arc the spine with it? Maybe the shoulders are turning with it. So we're turning as if we were trying to look at our tail. Maybe the head starts to rotate with it. So getting more of that global lateral flexion or movement of the spine, pulling at that fascia around the ribs and the pelvis. Good, find a neutral position. We're just gonna step our right foot forward, low lunge. Keep those back toes untucked and let's lift up. Picture that dowel or that broom behind us. So feel that triple S stacked. Left glute is on or firm. Let's start by rolling one shoulder back at a time. So in a gentle way, starting to move maybe some of that very tight constricted fascia around the neck, chest, shoulders. And let's focus on keeping that breath as expansive as we can into the ribs. Now pause from those shoulder rolls and let's start swinging one arm forward, one arm back. And as you do this swing, keep that back glute, so the back hip really active, a little tightening there. If it feels good, let the ribs start turning with it. So now we're getting more of a pull on the front of that left hip by adding some rotation. Getting a little bit more freedom around the rib cage. Good, hands come down, or you could come to fist, right foot steps out to the right. Plant that whole right foot down. So really try to make contact with your whole right foot. And let's start with a little just exploratory movement here. You can wag side to side like we just did in quadruped. You can tuck and tilt the pelvis like a little low back cat-cow. You could circle, but notice what happens around this right inner thigh and right groin as you start to move the pelvis around. So different areas are getting pulled and stretched. Now let's find a position that feels like a nice stretch, but you also feel supported in that left hip. So that left glute's working to stabilize. And maybe we add some rocks forward and back. Let's make sure we're breathing into the ribs, not holding the breath. Really make contact with that right big toe. Pause wherever it feels like a good amount of stretch, where you can be mindful about the positioning of your body and start to walk your hands over toward the right corner. So we're kind of reaching forward and to the right. So we're going to end up in a side bendy type of feeling for this left side. You could be up on fingertips. You could be on blocks. And wherever you feel like a nice pull, think about your left hip really moving back. Left hip back, 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 as you reach your arms forward. So we're thinking almost like our left side, our torso is taffy and we're being pulled in two different directions. So that left side's getting stretched and pulled, just a nice fascial pull. So it's a gentle but active pull. And then bring the hands back under the shoulders, quadruped. Ooh, let's move it around with a little bit of that torso circle. So now instead of just the pelvis, let's get the whole spine kind of rolling, circling both ways. Left foot forward. Keep those back toes untucked if that feels okay. Lift up, feel that the pubic bone is zippering up. So pulling on the front of that right hip. Roll the shoulders back. Really feel the shoulder blade get involved. Lift up, pull back, and down. Tailbone is reaching long toward the ground. Okay, now let's pause the rolls and add a swing of the arms. So this is a controlled swing. I'm not wiggling anything down below. Now maybe we add a turn of the ribs with it. So the pelvis and low back and hips still aren't turning. We're getting all this movement above. Let's head to that adductor rock. So hands or fists come down. Left foot steps out to the left. Plant that whole foot down. Really try to make contact with the ground because then you're going to get more muscles involved. Let's start with whatever type of movement feels good. Maybe we're kind of swiveling the pelvis. Cat-cowing. Rocking side to side. Find a nice area of pull. Maybe we sit back and rock forward and back. Breathing into the rib cage. Now find that area of stretch where you can still keep the ribs in. Hands walk toward the left corner. Right hip creases, thinking back, 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 back. But my upper body is reaching forward. So we're getting this pull along the right side. Like we're trying to make this space between our ribs and our pelvis as long and stretched as possible. Breathe into the side and back ribs. Good, bring it back. Quadruped, your choice. You can cat-cow, you can torso circle, you can take a child's pose, or head to a down dog. Let's meet back in quadruped. So wherever you are, transition back to hands and knees. Our right foot is going to step forward again, but this time we'll tuck the left toes. Lifting up, same 90-90. Picture that broom behind you. This time our hands are interlacing like we're holding hands. Start with just the shoulder blades. So protract, shoulder blades spread away like you're being pulled forward, but don't let the back change. So just the shoulder blades, we're not losing any height as we protract. Now left glute is on. Lift your arms up any amount overhead. Stop as soon as the back starts to arch or as soon as the ribs start to pop. Now wherever you hit that place, lift up even more like someone is lifting you up. Don't let those ribs pop forward, keep them in. If it feels okay, add a little shimmy of the ribs side to side. So again, we're targeting this side body fascia, the muscles around the side body, around the hip, all the way up through the shoulders, getting a little stretch and pull and lift. Good, bring your left hand down, maybe to a block if you have it. Hold that left shoulder really stable, really still. Right hip crease is thinking back, back, back. Turn the ribs maybe an inch to the right toward that front leg. Now take your right hand for a moment. Maybe just awareness or a little push back of the front ribs to make sure we're not extending the spine here. Let the neck release. Now take that right arm up. Feel that upward reach like taffy, like we're trying to get stretched. And if it feels okay, take that right arm, reach it forward toward the front of the mat, but really hold the ribs in. And we want that same feeling of being pulled in opposite directions here. We're trying to get as long as we can in the torso. Then backstroke that right arm one full time, and then a half time as we head back to quadruped. Let it swivel or circle that pelvis side to side. That left hip was just working hard. Now we'll step left foot forward. Tuck the right toes. Lift up. Feel that connection. Ribs right over pelvis. Right glute is active. Interlace the fingers. Protract without rounding. So we're not losing any of our height as we protract the shoulder blades. Lift way up, but keep the ribs in. Now, as you keep lifting up, imagine someone taking you by the rib cage and just lifting your whole rib cage straight up. So we're trying to get as much space as we can between the side of the ribs and pelvis. Stretch, stretch, stretch. Maybe continue that with a little shimmy. And then notice as you start shimming this upper body, are we feeling any extra pull down below maybe? So we have all these different fascial connections. When we pull on one area, you could feel it all the way into a different body part. Good, right hand down or to a block. Secure this right shoulder so it's not moving around. We're gonna hold it in place. Left hip moves back, turn the ribs to the left, small amount. Left hand to the front ribs, and just have your awareness there that we're not popping them forward, or feel those ribs pull in slightly, and maybe that gets a little bit broader, a little bit more space in the mid-back. Arm comes up, stay here, or reach it forward toward the front of the mat. Now we want that opposite pull, that taffy. Send that left hip back, left arm forward, get stretched in both directions. Breathe into the side and back ribs. Backstroke the arm, full time, and then just a little half time back to quadruped. Your choice here. You can move in some kind of cat-cow, you can take child's pose, you can head to a down dog. Let's walk the feet forward. Bent knee forward fold. Push down into your feet, arms reach forward and up. Now feel that stretch here. Lift the ribs, lift the shoulder blades, lift the armpits as high as you can, but keep the ribs in. Do we feel any longer, any more space in the side body? And then hands come down. Then let's step our either foot back. We're just going to turn to a side of your mat. Feet are parallel. So our side lunge options today, of course, you want to keep the ribs in. So if you need to keep your hands on your ribs and side lunge here, you can. If you like that alignment of your triple S, skull and sacrum. So we're going for a nice elongated spine, whatever we're doing. But if you would like to add more of that fascial pull, you can add a little reach across. So whatever that looks like, practice reaching in different directions. So it's not that we're necessarily rounding the back, but we're moving the scapula. So our shoulder blade has to reach with the arm. Hopefully we know that by now. And feel as you reach in different directions. Maybe some surprising places you feel a little stretch or response to that action. We're getting, of course, into the fascia, into the muscles of the inner thighs, up into the pelvic floor as we side lunge, outer hips. So lots of nice pulls and stretches happening here. All right, quadruped. Now, if it feels okay, you can have the toes tucked under. That in itself might be a fascial pull for the feet. If you don't feel anything, you could rock the hips back more. This is also kind of a nice way to get into some wrist mobility as you rock forward and back. So getting as many things kind of stretched or mobilized at once is always nice. And a final cat-cow here. Checking in, how does the spine feel? Do we feel any more free in any areas in the spine, or maybe tissue-wise or fascia-wise? And let's head onto our back. Feeling that triple S. Skull, shoulder blades, and sacrum, chin slightly down so the back of the neck is long. You could have hands at your sides, arms can come out. And let's do a little rock here. So kind of like we started, without fully collapsing, rock onto that right hip, but keep pushing down into that left inner foot. Shoulder blades try to stay on the mat so we're not popping the ribs. And then maybe keeping the chin slightly in toward the throat. You rock the head side to side if it feels good. Good, come back to center. Rock onto the left hip, but keep pushing the ground away with that right foot. So it's still active. Chin in. Maybe we rock the head. Nice gentle movements and stretches and pulls. And then come back. You can do whatever feels good. You can hug the knees in. You could take a happy baby. Or just pause in any position that feels comfortable and restful. And as you inhale, we want to feel that full expansion into the ribs, front, side, and back. Fully exhaling. Inhale, feel that full expansion, almost like we could inhale so much that we would get that same side body stretch. Creating as much space as we can around the ribs. And as you just close your eyes for the next few moments here, thank yourself for your practice today. Send one grateful thought out into the universe.